So here I have a match against Autorun. Autorun was the champion of Season 5, so definitely one of the strongest players on Global. He's got a pretty big whale account with very high stats, backed by a player that clearly knows what he's doing. And as you can see here, his second ban against me is actually Liana plus Juggler. I doubt that Autorun is familiar with me or my box, so this isn't a case of somebody recognizing my box and then banning out characters they know I like picking. This is likely him recognizing that I play a very slow tanky box, and getting rid of Liana, one of the best healers, and Juggler, who is just very good in general, does a lot of damage to my box. He of course also first banned Rosenseal, so he's going for an AoE strategy. But the interesting thing is, even though he already banned out two of my best spellers in Rosenseal and Liana, he does not go for a Bolzel second pick like you would expect a lot of boxes like this to do. He instead goes for the second pick Old Landius. I probably should have just banned his Old Landius second. It's not super common for people to do that, but when they do that, you know that they're very confident in their zoning abilities. His next pick after that is actually Gizaroff. It's actually very, very rare for me to see somebody running both Old Landius and Gizaroff at the same time. And the main reason for that is because most people consider Old Landius and Gizaroff to be sort of moderate damage characters. Once you have just one of them, you can start picking your better damage characters from the mythical faction, of which there are plenty. So the interesting thing in this pick ban is that even though he banned out my AoE healers very early on, this turned out in a way so that I banned out his most threatening debuff AoE characters like Bolzel, or other very threatening mythical AoE characters like Ariana Grande or Reen. Whereas on my side you can see I have a very glory heavy team with Elvin, Yulia, and Chris. I think if somebody was to just look at the pick ban here, it would seem like I have an advantage. But of course the big key player here is the Old Landius on Autorun's side. That of course prevents my Elwyn from being able to just charge in and do whatever he wants. So in this case, perhaps as expected, he brought Gizaroff to buff instead of Old Landius. Even though Old Landius does offer extra damage from his buff, if you run faction buff on Old Landius, it actually really limits the number of skills he can bring. His 3C's cooldown is just too long, so if your goal is to just wall someone out, you really do want to bring the Light Array skill. Of course, he used the Light Array on the first turn, and now we have the 3C from Old Landius. He's just walling me out, not letting me rush in and kill his tank. It's likely that even though Autorun does have whale stats on his side, he does recognize that in a straight fight, I just have way more damage output and power on my side, so he's wisely just preventing me from being able to do anything. I have to waste my time going around all of Old Landius' tiles. So right here he blows up his Gizaroff construct. Now, one thing I find very, very irritating about Gizaroff is like, he does do 2 random debuffs, and here he gets a very key passive disable on my Landius. Honestly, losing the Gizaroff debuffs is way more aggravating than losing to Reen or Bolzel debuffs, because it's like, with Reen and Bolzel, if you get AoE'd, you kind of deserve to get a ton of really bad debuffs, but when it's Gizaroff, it's like, okay, he has the one skill that gave me some bad debuffs, and it just happens to be the one I really don't want. Of course, he also got a heal block on Chris here, and the only thing is that even though I mass healed with Tiaras, she did not remove the passive block out of the 2 debuffs he gave out. So that means right here, he decides to jump in with Juggler, and of course his Juggler does a ton of damage with that Master of Ice. Now here, maybe it would have been better if I didn't route Juggler and I instead just attacked with Yulia. But obviously if I had done that, he could just Dark Tincture my Yulia, and then I would lose her pretty easily. But anyway, in comes Old Landius with the follow-up. He brought Lightning on Old Landius, which, well, here's a reason why you don't run Cav Landius anymore. So yeah, a passive block is pretty annoying. Without Landius around, that probably just kind of screws me. I just don't really have the time to take care of both his Juggler and his DPS. Yulia deciding to die here probably doesn't help a lot either. Although, of course, it probably would have been better if I just used Discipline instead of Godly Menace. I mean, you could just really see like that absolutely insane Master of Ice damage that his Juggler did, as Yusuke bullies Chris here. I mean, she only has 1000 HP left. To be fair, I think even if I hadn't gotten that passive block, Old Landius would have taken the first life, and Yusuke probably would have taken the second. It really comes down to a stat check in that case, I think, and I doubt I would be able to outstat Autorun. Anyway, if you wanted to see me get blown up by a well, here's a good example of that.